is right with us, but we're really excited about this presentation. We have two teams presenting about their projects for xAPI cohort and two very different perspectives. I'm really, really, really grateful and excited to learn from Sara, who is a beginner in the xAPI realm. This was her first cohort, and she was able to prototype, try something, and wants to talk a little bit about how she used Moodle to help with her project. And I think that that's the beauty of cohort, is that cohort is an opportunity for so many different levels of learners to come together, try and create. So today we're going to have LRS to LMS by Dr. Sara Moore, who's going to share more about what she did this cohort. So Dr. Sara Moore presents learning initiatives that solve business problems, which are planned to be learned, used, and measured just in time. With a background in instructional design, academia, media design, and user research, she currently leads corporate L&D programs. She also has a background in higher ed and was once a professor. I'm really excited to pass over the mic to you, Sara.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for that warm welcome. So this, I believe, is pretty important to present because it's hard to jump into cohort and not feel a little overwhelmed because there are so many amazing projects going on. And everybody's got to start somewhere, right? So this is for all of you folks who are just trying to find your footing in it and trying to start somewhere. I love this process because it can all be done on free platforms. So if you want to give it a try, it's completely able to be replicated without you spending one penny. So the process that I took, that my team started taking was LRS to LMS. And so we initially started as an audio video project, but this warped very much. And I do want to say thank you to Jeremy Taylor, because he helped a lot with getting this project off the ground. Okay, so why xAPI? If you're a beginner, you may be asking that question. And so how many people here might be familiar with the STAR method, interview method? I'm going to throw up a little poll for you. Okay, looks like we've got a few people who are familiar. So STAR interview method is really thought after by a lot of large tech companies. And I know a lot of us are right now looking for jobs in this space. And this is a great way to get that R, which they really push for. And the R is results. So if you are building out your portfolio now, this is something to consider, doing a test project and pulling out some results that you can talk about in those interviews. So why I chose xAPI is because it gave me a closer look at the more minute details of a quiz in RISE, and it allowed me to target the learning, make the learning better, and it also allowed me to give my learners that customized experience. You know, these days everybody's looking for that customization. How many people have Netflix? I certainly have Netflix, and my husband has an account, my 5-year-old daughter has an account, and we all have very different content. This is a part of our culture now. And so that tailored content is going to be sought after more and more, and it's going to bleed into learning. So right there, that's why xAPI. Okay. Specifically in this process, I wanted to look at some quiz results and how to make my quizzes better and stronger in Articulate 360 RISE. Okay. So this is pretty much the process flow. I started in RISE, represented here by my R. And once again, I want to iterate that was Articulate 360 RISE, not rise.com. you need to extract the files for this process, and you can't do that on rise.com. So you want to go for that free trial of Articulate 360 Rise. So also, we used SCORM Cloud. So I took my Rise media, I popped it into SCORM Cloud. So you can see SCORM Cloud is sort of the central area that everything is living in. And then I embedded the file the Rise file that's living in SCORM Cloud is embedded in my LMS. And I'm also producing reports in SCORM Cloud that are being embedded in LMS. And my LMS for this project was Moodle Cloud, which is totally free. Could be set up in a matter of 10 minutes. But you can also do this and probably get more visually rich data. Well, the data is going to be the same, but more visuals if you had a normal Moodle server. So keep that in mind too. You're not at a disadvantage if you're on a normal Moodle server. Okay. Like my C's are being a little, they're being a little naughty. They're jumping out of their circle. So this is also another representation of the process flow. We've got Rise, 1 step in Rise. We have 8 steps in SCORM Cloud, 5 steps in Moodle, 4 steps in SCORM Cloud, and then back to 5 steps in Moodle, and we're done. Okay. Again, noting the free applications that I can use, that I have used and you can use to replicate this entire process. Again, Articulate 360 Rise, not Rise.com. And either version of Moodle can work just fine. Okay, so to get started, we start in Rise. And we created our Rise course. We're feeling good about it. And now it's time to export. So go ahead and click on that LMS choice because we're going to take it into Moodle. We're going to reach for that xAPI tin can option instead of our SCORM, which most of us normally do. And then you can also track it. This particular one says track using course completion, but you can track it using your quiz also. That's up to you. Okay, and now we're jumping into SCORM Cloud. So we're going to import the media to SCORM Cloud. And how we do that is right on the home page, you have the option to add content. And then you would go down and choose xAPI. So you've actually created something that's reading as xAPI just by exporting it differently from Rise, which is pretty cool. Next in SCORM Cloud, we're going to import that media file. We're going to continue to do that. So clicking Browse and then importing the course. And then we're going to create a dispatch. So this is something also that sort of helps that xAPI and the LMS and the LRS talk to each other. So just one more step you've got to do. Dispatch is right on your main left navigation. You're going to create dispatch. This arrow is pointing to the wrong thing. We're creating dispatch right here. And then you're going to be able to choose the course that you added. So I have 2 courses in right now. We're going to create a new destination and then click Create. After you've done that, on your dispatch page, any course that you have added will show up. So you want to click the little blue box over here to choose the course that you want. And then this is where you grab all that magic from SCORM Cloud in this BLTI section. And this next thing I'm going to show you is really, really important. This is it, and that's why we've got stars. You need these 3 sections of information, the URL, the key, and the secret. And we're going to bring this page up a little bit later, but I just want to note how important this information is. This is the stuff that makes the LRS speak to the LMS. Okay. And then this is one final step that I learned after my last presentation. Someone reached out to me, and that's why I love cohort. Everybody has great ideas and they're willing to share. But this is a very important step for your user experience. Go to the home, And you're going to want to adjust the frame set in SCORM Cloud. If you don't do this, when people go to log into your course from your LMS or any other avenue that you deploy the course through, they're going to get this foreboding pop-up that in a very tiny little bit says, you know, a little button says access the course, and then there's all this other warning stuff on it. Adjust the frame set. I promise you, you won't have to see that. Your users won't have to see that, and it's just one little thing to do. So go back into your course, scroll down on that course page, and this is very important too. That's why we got stars. You're going to find the course property section just by scrolling down onto that course page. You're going to want to pick the launch type as frame set and also the player launch type as frame set. And then you're going to want to, you can either pick a fixed set size or full screen. I personally like full screen because it's just like they've opened the door, they're walking into the class, it's right there, it's not a little pop-up. If for some reason you need a pop-up, you can set the size right here, but I prefer the full screen. Okay, now we've done those first 8 steps in SCORM Cloud, and we're going to go into Moodle. So this is assuming that in Moodle you have created a space for your course. You have an empty course shell, and you've named it. So this is where I'm at right now. I'm going into that empty course shell, and I'm going to, if you are just new at Moodle, I'm going to click this gear, and the gear is going to allow me to edit the course. Then I'm going to add an activity or resource. The next thing that we're going to see is this pop-up, and the activity that you're looking for is an external tool. Looks like a little green puzzle piece. And you're going to click Add. Now this is a really long page that you get, and it's sort of truncated when you open it. So when you open it, you're going to make sure that you click Show More, because all the good stuff, all that good stuff we're taking from SCORM Cloud is going to need to be entered below this fold that's truncated. So just make sure that you show more. Okay, so there's that starred page from SCORM Cloud, that all that really good stuff that's going to make our xAPI talk to our LMS. And we're going to pull that over. So on this page, so here we're showing, I've got 2 screens up, 2 windows up. I've got my Moodle window up and my SCORM Cloud window up. And on that same page that we opened, so this was that truncated page that I just showed you that said show more. I'm going to enter a title, and then I'm going to enter number 2, URL, comes over here, 2, URL. Key, number 3, pops over to here, consumer key. And then your secret, that sounds like you're in on something there. The secret goes over to 4, the shared secret. Click on that, and then it'll give you a little box to put that into. Also, I suggest scrolling down, and then in your activity completion, clicking on Show Complete when conditions are met. This is not going to affect your xAPI. However, it's going to give you another report in Moodle, so it never hurts to have another report to fall back on. Okay, so we just did that in Moodle, and we're going to assume that someone went through your course and they took it. Because now we're going to go look at the reports that were created. And you're not going to have any reports unless somebody goes through your course, right? So click on the course title. You're going to home, and then you'll find your course title. And you've got some pretty cool stuff in there already. And we're in SCORM Cloud. This is our LRS. You can just go in there and be happy and live with your reports in SCORM Cloud wherever if you want. But that didn't meet my needs. The reason I needed to pull my reports over to my LMS are so my managers could see how their teams were doing. So the teachers may see how their students are doing directly right there with their content, within their content. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do now. We're going to take these reports So we're going to embed them into Moodle too. So this shows a lot of good stuff about the quiz. But like I said, we want to pull that over. So to find that, what we did, this was our course that we were in SCORM Cloud. We scrolled all the way down and we saw the reports down here. But if you don't want them to live in SCORM Cloud, just live in SCORM Cloud, you want them also to live in your LMS, you can go to this brown reportage button. Reportage, that's kind of a funny term. Okay. Then we're going to go into your reports, and you see you've got all these great reports to pick from. Just click on the downward arrow of one or many of them. You can pick as many as you like. I chose 2. So the downward arrow opens it up, and it gives you this. And in the bottom right-hand corner of that, you will get a right-facing arrow and a little gray box, and it's an HTML widget. Click on this little button, and it opens up an iframe code. You're going to grab that code and embed it in Moodle. Okay, back to Moodle. So we're in our class. Now we remember to open up the editing. We click on the gear. We're adding another activity or resource. This time we're going to add a page. So this is actually an HTML page. We're just entering code, so that's all we need. You're also going to want to click Add. Forgot to note that. Okay, so once you open your HTML page, sometimes this is not expanded, so make sure you expand this full menu, and then you'll see your HTML code opportunity. So once you open that, you can pop your iframe in here. You can pop as many as you want, because we all know iframes are sort of these self-contained, beautiful little things that are self-containing, right? So you can put a few of them in there, and they'll play nice with each other, and they'll look really good. Okay, and so this is what it looks like. One thing I did, just want to note, one thing I did here, after I popped that in there, all the way on the bottom of the page, I hid it from students. So that's the key there. When I hide it from students, you get this little note that says hidden from students, and it appears, but it appears gray. So what we're doing here is, who can access it? Our teachers and our managers, because they have higher level privileges in Moodle than a student. They can all see that. They can all get into it. It looks grayed out, but they can still see it. The students will not see it. And this is what it will look like. Okay. So here's some examples of reports. You could get very detailed reports about the different questions in your quizzes as well. You can give them, maybe they have a series of courses that their team needs to do or their students need to do. You can reflect all of the courses in one iframe, or you can reflect individual course content, the time it takes people to get through it, average score, and then, like I said, you can also grab really detailed information about individual quiz questions too. Okay, and so this is some of that individual quiz question stuff. Like, it'll show you here, this person didn't get this one right. And then at the bottom here, we'll tell you what question it actually was. So you'll be able to find patterns. Also tells you how long it takes someone to get through your class. It's good stuff. We're done. That's it, right? But there's more, okay? This gives you that complete process from your LRS to your LMS with the embedded reports, with your embedded media. That part's done. But if you do distribute or deploy your training via some sort of messaging system, I know a lot of us use MS Teams interior to our companies, you can do this next thing. You also might be able to, maybe you have some interest in deploying on social media to a different group. You can bring people into that same course this way. This is the cherry on top. Okay. You go back to SCORM Cloud and create an invitation. Okay. You're going to come up here and also click create an invitation. Then you choose the course, public invitation. If you'd like an email to them, you can send a private invitation, but I did public because I shared mine on social media. So if you want the link, so if you want the MS Teams, the social media kind of thing, it will be public. Create invitation. And then here it is. This is what I shared on LinkedIn. And I had a few takers, random people just went through it, which was cool. And this is what they will encounter when they click on your link. So it will ask them for their email, their first name, last name. It will ask them to accept the terms and conditions, which pretty much you're collecting information about their personal, their email and their name and their performance on this quiz or class. And then they can go right into their training. Now they'll have this experience. They'll just take them right into that RISE course. It's a beautiful thing. They're right there. This will happen if you make sure you change that frame set in SCORM Cloud. If you didn't do that, they're going to get the foreboding pop-up. So remember that. Change the frame set. And that's what I have for you today. So if you'd like to get started, there's a free Torrance Learning xAPI cohort in the fall. I'm already signed up, so if you're there, I'll see you there. This is how you sign up for it. If you can't wait till the fall, this is my path that I've found and I recommend. Devlin Tech has amazing 3-part blog tutorial, and I would do it in this order as well. Start reading Devlin Tech's blog. Go there, read the 3-part tutorial. Hit up Mel Malloway's 3-part video series on YouTube. She actually walks you through the exact code that you would need to use in RISE, and she shares her code with you on GitHub. There's also, if you want to get away from RISE and do something standalone, because I know that's very popular right now, that those just-in-time learnings are very unique to themselves as well. And a cool part about xAPI is the interoperability. So if you're having a bunch of different experiences, they can all be funneled into one xAPI spot where your data shows up for all of those experiences. So for JW Player, there's Philip Gardner. You can find his stuff on YouTube. You can find Chad Smith stuff on Reddit, and he has JW Player and YouTube as well. And then if you're feeling really confident in this, you can just go straight out to GitHub, because by that time you're going to know what you're looking at, and there's a lot of great stuff out there. So my next steps for this project are going to be to extract more detail from media in RISE and Storyline. Mel Malloway has, Milloway, I'm sorry if I'm saying her name wrong, Mel. She's got some great tutorials on click interactions, page interactions, and she really shows you how to break it down and pull anything that's HTML and track it from RISE. So that's where I'm going next. I'm going to start integrating video player code, and I really would love to do that within RISE as well, learn more about those interactions, and then to do standalone external experiences. So I was mining for audio code. I couldn't find it. If anybody has the answer to that, I'm guessing that maybe it's not around because it's very similar to video code. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that if you have the answer as to why I can't find audio code. So if you have any suggestions for me or questions, I'd love for you to help me take this to the next level or to answer any questions I'm able to.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Sarah. We're going to get Brady teed up to present next, because this session we have two xAPI cohort projects presenting. But if you have questions for Sarah in her presentation, feel free to use the chat. Would love to hear from you and see what you're thinking. And Brady will get you ready to share your screen. Right now we have Brady Riordan, who has a background in psychology and education technology. Brady started his career as an e-learning developer and instructional designer. He quickly became interested in the technical aspects of learning and development and moved into development and IT. Brady is the IT manager for a national healthcare training organization. And in his spare time, Brady works on open source software projects like the one he's about to present with his team, Adaptive Learning, from the Spring 2020 xAPI cohort. With that, I'll pass over the mic to you, Brady. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Brady, if you're attempting to speak, you might be muted or your mic hasn't been selected.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry, I was on another mic and I saw a dreaded red dot, so that wasn't a good sign, so I had to switch mics. So I'll be presenting for Team Adaptive Learning. We were part of the 2020 Winter Spring xAPI cohort. I'm just one part of the team. We also had Riordan, Greg, Christy, Joanne, and Ali Zaman contribute. The goal of this project was to create an xAPI and machine learning powered adaptive learning module, but then also a bit of a platform that sequences content in real time. We realized that that was quite an ambitious goal. We didn't get quite as far as we would have liked, but we built a great foundation for the fall, and there's a couple of interesting individuals in carrying this on.
Hey, Brady, I think when you switched your mic, you might have dropped your slides from your screen share. There you go.
There. Can you guys see now?
Now we can see.
Okay, great. So one of the sort of foundations of the project is a lot of work that Bloom did. You'll notice in a couple of areas we use some of his work. The first one is mastery learning. So as opposed to traditional instruction where students are presented with content, they're given an assessment, and then they carry on regardless of whether or not they master that content. Mastery learning is a little bit different in that if they don't quite master the content after the assessment, they're given corrective activities that specifically address the learning outcomes that they didn't achieve. And then they're given another formative assessment that's slightly different from the first one. And this assessment, again, specifically focuses on the learning outcomes that they didn't do so well on. If you have a student that does really well after the first one, they get enrichment activities that maybe introduce some related context or reinforce some of the stuff that they learned. The next piece from Bloom is the 2 sigma problem. So if you look at the graph, the green graph to the left is the conventional method of instruction, and the 1 to 30 is the participant to student or facilitator ratio. And you can see that it's a little bit farther to the left than the other two, meaning that on average the students didn't do quite as well. There's a lot of students that didn't do really well, and there's a lot of students that did do really well, and there's kind of a lot in the middle. Mastery learning is a little bit better. You can see it's a bit farther to the right, so on average students performed better. There are more students in the middle of the graph, so there are fewer students that did very poorly and did very well. Better than conventional, but not quite as good as the next one. The next one is mastery learning combined with one-on-one facilitator to student ratio. So that one is obviously the best. Those students on average perform 2 standard deviations better than the conventional. And then another really interesting piece of data around this is that only 20% of people in the conventional class reach what 90% of people in the one-on-one class did. And so the big question here is, how can this be reproduced with technology? Because obviously 1-to-1 ratio doesn't work. There aren't that many teachers to go around, so there has to be a solution potentially with technology that we can use. The approach that we use and a lot of other people are looking at these days is adaptive learning. And so what I'll do in this next section is just to go through kind of the steps to build an adaptive learning module. I'll talk about what we did and what our approach was and what we want to do in the future in the fall. So at a very high level, and I'll go into each one of these things in detail, but you have to build an expert model or a knowledge map. You have to build a learner model. You have to build a tutor or an algorithm that sequences the content for you. And then you have to create an interface. So both for admin, students, teachers to create content, and also for students to interact with the content. So the first thing that we realized that we had to do is we had to create a knowledge map. You can see on the left, it's represented in a graph type. On the right, it's a bulleted list. It's the same data, it's just a way to visualize it. And you'll notice that the one on the right is actually from the GitHub documentation. We decided to use xAPI as our content. And as we were thinking about our content, we realized that the documentation was the perfect place to start. So if everybody that went through the module knew everything about the documentation, then we would know that they were proficient in that area. And so what we did is we kind of expanded each one of the expert model items in the documentation. So you can see in the introduction, it's not enough to say we want people to master the introduction in xAPI. So we had to add a little bit more context around that. So what we did is we, under each of these sections, we added little learning objectives. And we're also using Bloom's taxonomy verbs in each one of the objectives. So you see in the introduction, we want people to compare and contrast xAPI and SCORM. We want them to describe the history of xAPI, explaining what xAPI is. And we went through each of the items in a Google spreadsheet to expand on the documentation. The next thing is the learner model. Sorry, I'll just go back one slide. The expert model is what is the ideal state for every learner after they complete a module. So we want them to be an expert in everything that is in that model. And the learner model is the learner's current state. So when they start, they obviously wouldn't be experts, or they wouldn't have mastered any of that content. One way to represent the learner model is a number, and that's what we're deciding to use. So in the first one, for example, compare and contrast xAPI and SCORM. Maybe they interacted with one small piece of content, so we're not sure that that learner has mastered that content, so it's a lower score. And then explain what the xAPI is. In that case, it's a 4. Maybe they've experienced a whole bunch of content and they've answered some questions, so we're relatively sure that they're an expert there. And the learner model is constantly updated based on, I'll talk about it a little bit more in the future, but it's based on data that we send from the module. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to create content. And we need to create both instructional and assessment content. And we need to tag that content with an expert model item. We need to tag it with a content type. So the content types that we used were text, video, simulations, audio, and there's a few other ones. And then we also tag each piece of content and assessments with difficulty level. And again, we used Bloom's taxonomy levels. I think there are 3 levels, and we so 1 and 2 are number 1, 3 and 4 are number 2, and then 5 and 6 are number 3. So what we're looking at in terms of data points are completion time. So anytime a learner interacts with a piece of content, we want to know how long it took them. We want to know whether or not they accessed any hints, if they're assessment items. We want to know how they performed on assessments, whether or not they got it right or wrong. In some adaptive learning products, I've seen self-reports. So you can actually say how well you think you know the content. And then we also want to look at the learner model to see what their current state is. And one of the things that we're considering using is the xAPI state API. And so the next thing that we need to build, and I'll just mention that this is where we got to in the project. We built a plugin in WordPress, and we got to the content stage, and all this stuff is where we're going to go. So the next piece is the sequencer or algorithm, and so at this point, we need to get information from the LRS we need to then do some analysis on that, and then we need to make a decision, or the algorithm, the sequencer, will need to make a decision as to what content to present next. So you can imagine a scenario where somebody is going through some content, they've interacted with maybe 3 pieces of instructional content, they get to an assessment, and they don't perform very well, then the algorithm is probably going to say, this piece of content is not mastered. Let's go back and review some content. Maybe they'll present them with content they've never seen before. Maybe they'll present them with content they have seen before. So the high-level steps, sort of from A to Z, is you need to be able to author content. You need to be able to tag that content with difficulty, a specific learning objective, and a content type. You need to present that content to learners in an interface. You then need to send xAPI statements to an LRS. You need to make that xAPI data available to an algorithm or a machine learning model. You need to train and tweak that model, and then you need to deploy it in such a way that it can return results on the fly. So ideally, when this is done, after somebody completes the slide and they press next, we'll send that information to a model. It'll say, based on some of the things I described in the last slide, this is the most appropriate piece of content to present next. So what I'll do now is I'll just go to the WordPress site and the WordPress plugin, and I'll show you where we got to. So the plugin is called WP Adaptive. In the plugin, there are 3 different post types and 2 different taxonomies. And taxonomies, if anyone's familiar with WordPress, they're just tags or categories. In this case, they're custom taxonomies. So the first place that I'll show you is the expert model items. And this is the expert model. And so this is very similar to a category in WordPress in that it's hierarchical, so I can nest things beneath other things. And see, I have the startings, the beginnings of the table of contents populated in here. So here's the introduction. We looked at this on a couple of slides. These are the things that are under the introduction. And what we'll eventually do is add the whole table of contents in here, and then add all of our learning objectives below each one of these items. So that's kind of the first step in WordPress, is you have to populate this expert model. The next place that I'll go to is the modules. Modules is not that interesting. It's basically just a container. So in this case, the module would be xAPI. And then the next one is nodes, and nodes belong to modules. So here. So here's one node that we have populated. So the first thing you probably do with the node is you'll add some content here in the WordPress editor. And then you'll see on the side here, there's an expert model items box where you can associate this piece of content with a specific expert model item. And this is probably one of the most important things about adaptive learning, is you need a relationship between a piece of content and a specific learning objective. And that's what allows the algorithm to populate the learner model and then recommend other content based on how the learner model is updated. So there's another meta box down here with all of the other fields. In the post type, the object ID is something that we're going to use for xAPI. This is going to be the object ID of this specific knowledge node. Source is for attributing it if it's copyright, or if we want to identify that it has some sort of open license. There's a link, there's a video URL if the content type is video. And then here's another important drop down. Here, this is where we tag the content type. So these are the content types I was talking about before: text, text and image, image link, video, audio, and web object. This could be a really important content. This could be a very important box if, for example, somebody notes that they prefer video content. So maybe if you have enough content per expert model item, you could only present video content to somebody. And then if the algorithm is complex enough, you could identify, hey, maybe not, this does or doesn't work. So even though they said they prefer video, we'll try text and see if that ends up being better and they can master the content quicker. And then here's the difficulty drop down. And here's the 1 to 3 items that I was mentioning. And here's the license. And then assessments is the other content type. It's very similar to nodes in that you tag each assessment type with an expert model item. And then you can write a question in here. You assign it a difficulty. And then here, right now, we support multiple choice. So you can write in some text for multiple choice questions and determine whether or not it's correct. And that's about where we got to. Obviously, there's a lot to do in the fall. Next thing to do is create an interface so we can actually start testing this out as learners and then send xAPI statements to an LRS. And after that, we'll look at pulling the data from the LRS and using it in a machine learning model so that we can dynamically sequence the content and then go from there. Thanks, everybody. If you have any questions, just let me know.
All right, thank you, Brady. Thank you, Sara, as well. Great presentations. Really enjoyed your projects. Good work on those. I'm going to pop up the evaluation once again for this presentation. Go ahead and leave your feedback. If you have any other information, feel free to share it in the